So this actually just happened to me, and I wanted to record a video to tell you exactly what happened. And this is for all the people out there who have ever considered or are currently considering taking their own life. So I was walking by the pier. So over here on Lakeshore, I was walking down by the pier. I was actually enjoying a beautiful sunny day, very windy, big puffy clouds, beautiful day. And I was listening to some music, just kind of zoning out, enjoying life, loving life. And I started walking back eventually, like after 30 minutes or however long I was there. I started walking back around the pier, right? So there's like a corner. So I'm walking around the corner of the pier. Now there's a parking lot situated there on the corner. So the parking lot there, and then there's like the pier around the parking lot. So as I'm walking around that corner, I noticed somebody out of the corner of my eye approaching me. This guy, young guy in his early 20s, approaches me. And I look over and he's like, "Hey, man." And I'm like, "Hey." He's like, "Can I talk to you for a second?" And I said, "Yeah, sure. What's up?" And he's like, "I'm having thoughts of taking my own life." And I looked at him. He was wearing shades, and I could see the light passing through his shades. The way he was speaking, it didn't seem like he was entirely sober, but it was just almost indetectable. So I said, "Are you on mushrooms?" He's like, "No." I'm like, "Are you high? Are you drinking?" He's like, "No." So I said, "Okay, tell me what happened." And he was telling me that he had just broken up with his girlfriend of 7 years. So they were together since he was 15. And I overheard him a little bit later when he was talking to her on the phone, and I'll get there, that he had tied his identity to her essentially. He didn't know who he was outside of this relationship. And he was talking to me about that situation, and now he had attempted to take his own life a couple of days prior. That he had, taken 20 Tylenol, and he was in the hospital. I guess they pumped his stomach, and he was on a watch there for 72 hours. And his family's concerned about him. And after the actual incident, his dad had bought him a car, a Maserati, which was sitting there in the parking lot blasting music. And he was telling me it means nothing, all this stuff, it means nothing. And in my head, I'm like, well, of course, like why would you care about a car if you're having these thoughts in your head? So of course it made sense. I related a story to me, and I'm going to tell you three things that I personally experienced that I also tried to impart onto him. Now, the unfortunate part of this entire situation was the fact that he indeed was drinking. Like I smelled it on his breath and I could tell that he was drinking. And when I overheard him, when somebody had called him to like interrupt their conversation, he sat in the backseat of his car and he was and alcohol, car, he had driven there. So now I'm starting to get concerned, but he's sitting in the backseat of his car speaking to his girlfriend, his ex-girlfriend. And I'm sitting outside. He's like, "Hey man, can you give me 5 minutes? Just give me 5 minutes." I'm like, "Yeah, of course, man. I'll hang out." So he's talking, and I could sense that I could hear him crying. I could tell that he was having a really hard time with this. And then eventually he just thought he's like, "Hey man, why don't you just kind of sit in the car?" So he wanted me to just be around him, right? So I sat in the front seat of the car, and I was basically listening to the conversation that he was having with his girlfriend on speaker. So I'm in the front seat and I'm listening, and I'm like kind of like overlooking the pier, and it's just this crazy juxtaposition because you're seeing like this beautiful day in front of you, but you're hearing the chaos. So I'm hearing the chaos occurring behind me. So this guy's drunk, and he's speaking to his ex, who is essentially telling him that you've told me this before, you've lied so many times, all you got in is drink. I've given you chances before, I had faith in you. It's just clearly this was not an abnormal occurrence as far as like him being the way he is, but apparently finally she just broke up with him. And he attempted to take his own life. And he had mentioned multiple times on the phone while he was talking to her that he was going to do it again tonight. So, of course, I'm concerned, but I'm also aware that he's drunk, right? So he's inebriated severely, it seems. And there's no way to actually connect with somebody logically when they're in that state. It's one thing to be in a state like a psychological state where you're sober, like you're free from substances, but your thoughts are overtaking you, because then it's you can connect with somebody, but when the chemicals are cascading, you become a different person, right? You become a different person, especially when you introduce alcohol, you introduce psychedelics, you introduce drugs into the equation. Then you're not really talking to the person, you're talking to what is possessing the person. And that's not them. So I'm speaking to this person, and after he hangs up the phone, and I'm like, hey man, why don't you give me your keys? So I could tell that it wasn't going to work out between him and his ex. Hangs up the phone, and I get out of the front seat. I open the back seat. I'm like, hey, why don't you give me your keys? I could call your mom and she could take you home. And he's like, no, I'm good. I'm good. I'm like, yeah, okay. But just, give me your keys and then I could drive you home, afterwards. So he gives me his keys. I put them in my pocket. And I already know that he's resistant. I could tell that he's being resistant to me, like doing anything, because his mind, he's not only drunk, so he's not only like physically intoxicated, he's also going through a crisis right now. So I'm trying to talk him down, and I'm going to tell you everything that I told him afterwards, but I'm going to kind of close off the situation, and then I'll tell you specifically what I told him, and how what I told him is tied directly to my own experience, because I've had my own hard times. Now, I've never done that, but I've had people around me either attempt that, or people that I know of have gone through with it. So clearly this video is for you, right? For you, if you're going through this, and hopefully if you know somebody who is going through this is going to help you, right? Now, in my particular case, it's very unfortunate because, like I said, physically intoxicated, you can't really talk to somebody like that because they're just in their own world. It's not possible. So eventually he sees me put the keys in his keys in my pocket, and I'm like, okay, why don't you just get your mom on the phone, right? Let's get her down here. And he's like, no, 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 I'm good. So now he could sense that I'm trying to like control the situation. He's like, give me my keys. So now he's getting aggressive. So I'm like, okay, man, here, take your keys, right? So he gets out of the car and he walks over to the pier, and he sits down by the, because he's bending over. I could tell that he's drunk, and I'm like, is he gonna jump? What's he gonna do? And he sits down by the pier. Now his legs are dangling over the edge. So now I'm getting concerned. And now it's out of my control. I don't know what to do. So I kind of approach him from the side very gently, and I'm like, hey man, is there anything I can do for you? Like, what can I do for you? And he's like, no, 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 man, I'm good. And he shakes my hand as if to say goodbye. I'll take it from here. So at that point, um, I had to call paramedics. I had to call somebody to like help him, because I could tell that this was a bad situation. I was not equipped to handle this, and I needed the professionals. So basically, they came in, and what's crazy about this whole situation is, as they're coming, so I'm on the phone when I describe the situation. They come over, so I wave to them by the pier, like I wave them over, I'm like, so it's over here, like he's over here, and they come over and they see a man kind of stand up, who was the man I described to them over the phone, and he starts walking towards his car. So this guy, right in the nick of time, these guys show up as he's about to get into the, because he was now getting to the driver's seat of his car. So effectively, he was probably going to drive, and he lived. You don't know where this is, but he lived in Vaughan. We were in downtown Toronto. That's like from here in this type of traffic, like an hour away. So accident definitely waiting to happen, almost a certainty. Maybe killing himself, maybe killing somebody else. So it's not really. It's just like it was the right time for them to show up and handle the situation. So they come in, and he's now in his car, closes the door. They approach the car. Two guys approach the car, one from the driver's side, one from the passenger side, and they talk to him. They're not like aggressively pulling him out of the car and getting him down. It wasn't like that. They understand the mindset that he's in, because I described to them over the phone what's going on. So they're very sensitive about the situation. So I'm very glad that they handled it well. And that was it. I told them what happened, came here. So let me relay a couple of things to you, because back when I was, right before I became homeless, and I was sleeping in the cheapest motel room in Niagara Falls with the cockroaches, I had no money. I had to take the breakfast, the the motel breakfast downstairs, which was basically powdered eggs. It's like powdered eggs, and you beat them into like this liquid. You mix water with the powder, and then you make eggs, right? Whatever that is. So I would take a big plate of that, and I would have it. I would have half in the morning and half in the afternoon. And that would be and I'll buy a sack of potatoes from the grocery store, and that would last me hopefully for the next 7 days. So the $4 sack of potatoes plus the free breakfast from the motel. And I remember one night I was sitting in the motel room and I was looking up, and I couldn't believe that my life had come to this. And I was looking up, and what washed over me was like like death was present, like the spirit of death washed over me. And I started having not thoughts of doing it, but I inhabited the existential space that is inhabited when people actually go through with that, right? Commit that act. So that scared me because I finally got into their headspace. And of course, it frightened me because it's not something I've ever experienced. Now, I never made a plan. I never planned on doing it. I never even seriously considered. Well, I thought about what would happen if I wasn't here, but I never like planned it out or decided that I was going to do it. But I always wondered like what it would be like. And then this happens. So, and then a few years prior, when I was a few years, maybe almost 10 years prior, when I was in college and university, and I was lost, I didn't know what I was doing. I was studying something I didn't want to pursue long term. And I would tell myself, and I was doing a lot of drugs at the time, and I was completely lost. And I would tell myself before I would go to sleep every night, I would say, tomorrow's another day. Tomorrow's another day. So three things here, right? So I would tell myself that repeatedly. And this lasted for years, but tomorrow was indeed another day. And this is what I've learned, okay, as far as personal things from personal experience, not something that I read in a book, right? And I studied this. It's from personal experience. Number one, you can always tell yourself tomorrow is another day because it is, and it's a new day, and it may not be the same. So what's important for me, what was important for me at that time, and maybe important for you, is to do something a little bit new, just slightly new every day. It doesn't have to be necessarily like, I'm going to drop everything. I'm going to start working out and do this and do that and do all of these good things, because it's when you're in that state, you can barely get up in the morning. Right? You can barely get up. So just try to do something new. So like just starting a conversation with the clerk at the store, speaking to somebody for an extra 10 seconds, taking a different route to somewhere, trying a different food, going to a different place, putting yourself in a different headspace and putting yourself in situations that hopefully could be like a very small, slight improvement. Now, when I say trying something novel, don't do novel things that are just destructive, right? Because that is not the way to go, because that'll continue taking you down that path. But doing something new, something novel that's a little bit helpful, right? Okay, this was a little bit helpful, that was a little bit helpful. And then telling yourself at the end of each day, okay, tomorrow is another day. Tomorrow is another day. And the fundamental recognition, which is this, that you have a gift. You have a special gift that nobody else has. Only you can give that gift to the world. Nobody else can give it. There's never in history been anybody like you, and never in the future will anybody exist like you. You're a unique individual, and you have special gifts that are bestowed upon you that only you can give to the world. And if you're no longer here, those gifts are gone forever. They're gone forever. Now, unfortunately, as I was speaking to this gentleman, relaying my own thing, having a heart-to-heart with him, and when I say gentleman, I mean like young, 22 years old, 22-year-old guy, just broke up with his girlfriend, had already attempted, 3 days prior, like crazy. All the money his family has didn't do anything for him, of course, right? But being physically intoxicated, you can't receive any of this information. It's not landing, because I could tell that he was kind of nodding, but he wasn't all there, So at that point, there's not much that can be done. But remember those three things, which is that, first of all, you're not alone, because the situation that he's describing is a situation that I went through. As far as, I mean, there's some similarities there, some differences. When I broke up with my ex, it wasn't it wasn't that, it wasn't the same situation that he went through, where I was just a total, I was messing up left, right, and center, and then she left me. It wasn't like that. It was the fact that we were, incompatible. We had a lot of conversations that weren't going anywhere. And then eventually, just reaching a point of saying, hey, like this, these conversations, like nothing is, there's no improvements being made. So, we can't continue being together. So, but again, it tore me up, of course. It tore me up because I thought I was going to have a future with this person. I thought I was going to have a family with this person. I thought this person was going to be the one for me, right? So to speak. But I was wrong. And I had to recognize that I was wrong and make the hard decision. It was so hard. One of the hardest decisions I've ever had to make. But the thing is that you could see, and I could see by speaking to this person and knowing people in the past who've been in that situation, that all the circumstances are very similar. So first of all, understanding that you're not alone, and it's not going to help sometimes people telling you, yeah, well, what about the people who love you and you're going to leave them? That may be true, right? But guilt, sometimes when you're in that state, first of all, doesn't help, and you don't care. You're like, okay, well, I feel like this. I feel like I do not want to exist. So you don't even, like, you're not even concerned about you being here. So how are you going to be concerned about somebody else's feelings when you're gone? So it's like, I understand that advice and where it's coming from, but I'm going to tell you from my experience, right? And maybe that works, maybe it doesn't. But from my personal experience, it's those three things. Number one, telling yourself, number one, when you're in that state, doing something, anything. You could watch a movie, like a helpful movie, just something, read a book, write something on a forum, like reach out to a friend. If you don't have any, like, again, do something new. Like, I didn't really have anybody to talk to. I didn't feel comfortable even talking to my own family about this, right? So because you feel isolated, you feel ashamed, you want to talk to them, you wouldn't want to talk to anybody anyway when you're in that state, which makes sense. So knowing that, okay, so I don't want to talk about God right now because maybe you're not religious or spiritual. So let's kind of leave that aside. Let's leave the whole family friends thing aside. So assume that it's just you. It's not, right? It's not just you. And I want to put this out there, but just assume for a second that it is. Know that you have, if you watch all of my previous videos, you'll see the messaging that I give you, which is like everything that you need is in you already. You already have that. You already have everything in you already. You just have to access it. So once you learn how to access it, you can do anything. So you can use that to a small degree, right? Make small little changes, small little like novel things, maybe slight improvement here. Okay, maybe you fall back, but it's okay. Give yourself some credit. You're going to make mistakes, a small improvement there. And at the end of every day, tomorrow's another day. Tomorrow's another day. And then keep trying to make those like small gradual improvements and understand that it may not show now, but you have gifts inside you that will basically vanish if you vanish, right? So it's like you're already unique. You are, like, you may not know this yet, but you are special. It sounds very cliche, but it's actually true. It's actually true. You're special because your DNA is special. If you want to, don't look at it like in the spiritual sense. You're like, oh, it's special. Well, your DNA is special. There's never been anybody like you biologically. So what makes your psychology any different? What makes your heart any different? It's not, right? It's unique. It's unique. So keep those three things in mind and understand that in hard times, we're all together in this, man. Like, we're all suffering. I've been through it. People I know have been through it. Guys going through it right now. So I pray for him. I hope you pray for him as well. And yeah, that's all I got to say. If you found this video helpful, leave a comment down below, like the video, maybe subscribe to the channel, maybe like tell me if you disagreed with me, if you want me to cover something else. Please feel free to like share your thoughts. And yeah, until next time, I will see you tomorrow. But I hope that was helpful for anybody struggling with this issue, or for anybody who knows for anybody who knows somebody who is struggling with this issue. Maybe send this video to them as well, and hopefully that it's going to help them. So until next time, I will see you soon.